having fish raised and then killing them to eat them, or taking some stem cells and growing them in a lab? Which is less moral? Is it worse to kill fish for food or to eat fish grown from a lab based on stem cells? Welcome to The Latter-day Lens, your home for faith-promoting, unscripted discussion of current events. If you'd like to contact us, you can send us a text message through the link in the show notes. You could also email us, latterdaylens@gmail.com. If you want to know more about the show, please visit our website, latterdaylens.com. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Latter-day Lens. It is so good to have you with us this week. We're so glad to have you join us. Today, it's Shawn and myself. I'm Matt. We have no guests with us because Cinco de Mayo, maybe? I don't know.
I think it's because you pick topics, so you're like, these are the hot topics that Shawn and I need to debate.
Yeah, it's probably that. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I like it to just be Shawn and I with no third guest. I love when Mark joins us on the podcast, but sometimes it takes me a little bit of unwinding to do after the fact, and I'm like, I need some time with just Shawn and I to kind of like decompress. Because I don't mind when people team up on me. That part's fine. But and I enjoyed the podcast with Mark last week. It's just like sometimes it got a little heated, which was fine with me. I think that it's good for things to get heated, but sometimes it's nice to just be Shawn and I, heated in a different way.
Different heated. Okay, I'll try and get heated differently.
No, I mean, you're fine, Shawn. So speaking of which, like there was a lot of discussion about the racism stuff from last week. So one listener wrote in and said the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was racist. And then another listener wrote in and said a policy which is racist in effect should be remedied. Intent is irrelevant. I wish we lived in a country capable of saying, ah, shucks, we didn't know that was going to reduce your voting power. We're sorry. Let's fix that right away. So, yeah, what I've decided is there are really strong divisions on whether the Voting Rights Act was racist and what racism means. And try as we might to solve that, I don't think we changed any minds, Shawn.
Oh, I don't think most people are thinking about it, but maybe our audience is. Maybe they think about it deeply, and you're suggesting that no minds were changed. They either believe that or they don't.
I think so.
I don't think I remember where you landed. You said that.
Well, I remember you said, Shawn, that when I say that a policy is racist, it cheapens the word racism.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of listeners are sort of on my side. It doesn't matter if the policy, if the intent behind it is, I hate racial minorities, so I'm going to enact this policy. Or if we say, hey, this policy is creating racial division in society, therefore it's racist because of its effects. So I think that's where the divide comes down.
It's a good point. Our beloved friend from Oregon who made that comment. It's a great point. I'm listening to you, friend, and I'm considering that for sure.
Here's my thought experiment, Shawn. What if we did this? So it just turns out that it was the 1824-ish presidential election. It was about the first 20 to 30 years of our country before anyone other than a white male landowner was allowed to vote in an election.
Yeah.
1824 is when you had white men, whether they own land or not, being allowed to vote. So what if we just did this experiment? For the next 30 years, white male landowners are not allowed to vote. And it's not about race, and it's not about the intent of our hearts. It's just saying for the first 30 years, you guys were the only ones who could vote. So for the next 30 years, you're just going to take a timeout and no white male landowners voting. And then we just see what happens in the country in those 30 years.
You're looking for me to approve that? You're needing me to approve that or veto
I
it?
want to know what you think about that idea. It wouldn't be
there's
racist.
one thing, Matt, there's one thing that you said to me so often on our mission. I don't know why you said it to me all the time. There must be something in there. You would often say, Shawn, 2 wrongs don't make a right.
That's because you were trying to break the rules.
This
has nothing to do. No, it's not about wrong, right? It's just about saying like, okay, let's say
it is about wrong, right? It definitely is, because during those 30 years, it was absolutely, unequivocally wrong that just because the culture of the day was the southern states practiced slavery doesn't mean that, oh yeah, we need to acquiesce to them and say, okay, then only white people can vote. That's wrong. That's against our
Okay.
Constitution. That's just wrong. It's against everything.
Well, it was in the Constitution, but I agree.
It was?
Yeah, that the Constitution was built around allowing slavery.
All men are
Yeah.
created equal?
That's the Declaration of Independence.
Yes, okay.
Yeah,
See.
against our founding principles, we'll say. But isn't it okay, like, if we say, you know what? Is there anybody in U.S. history that will deny that white male landowners had an advantage for those first 30 years? They probably had an advantage, right?
That'd be dishonest to deny that.
Okay. So we're just going to say for the next 30 years, that group is just at a disadvantage, just for 30 years. And then after that, we're not going to like pay reparations. We're not going to like go back and try and fix everything in the past. We're just going to say,
oh, so
you're
pitching this to get rid of your guilt, your liberal
not
white
guilt, not any of that, right? But couldn't we just say, look, we haven't been able to come up with a good solution to like make things right. So for our solution it's like in hockey, right?
Okay.
If you're in hockey and you do something wrong, you just have to take a timeout for a little while and then you can come back in.
Question though. And I think I don't agree with Barack Obama's politics or his leadership skills, but I do think that he was such a beautiful and positive thing for our country, because to have that man in the White House changed a lot culturally. And ever since that, I'd say the ratio of, like, when I don't watch much TV, but when I do see a commercial, the ratio of minority to, majority representation is like 90-1 now. And I love that. I love it. I think it's so cool. Mm-hmm. Matt, how could you, because of all those strides, how can you possibly say that in 2026 that this isn't the greatest time that's ever existed for minorities? And I know my friend Levi would get really upset for me, but when has it been better? Tell me, when has it been better for minorities to live in America? When has it ever been?
When Barack Obama was president would be better than right now.
What's the difference? Tell me one difference. Just one difference.
Have you seen that Alabama is now trying to redraw their districts to get rid of the black representation in Alabama?
Are we
Louisiana's doing it, and Tennessee's doing it.
So you're bringing that back.
This all just happened in the last week.
Yeah, I did.
So if I'm an African American, no, this is not better for me than when Obama was president, because now if I live in those states, my representatives are trying to take away my representation.
But hang on, you're suggesting that this redistricting is something novel to 2026? Redistricting has been
redistricting based on race. Redistricting based on race.
Oh, you don't think that's existed in the past?
In the past, they would create districts. It was called a majority minority district to ensure that there would be black representation in the South. Right. So now they're going to divide up all of those, especially with geographic information systems now. Let's say that the city of New Orleans has like a whole bunch of like black people living right in the middle of the city of New Orleans. You can draw up your congressional districts in such a way that all of those black people get split up into a different district where they're the minority in all of those districts.
Okay, and that
was illegal.
Yeah. And because of the ruling, you're saying there's more leniency for them to actually go back to how they used to do it, which is
what I'm saying is that Alabama is now trying to do that, Tennessee is now trying to do that, and Louisiana is trying to do that.
So you're saying
it would be during Obama was better for them.
So you're saying on the hierarchy of, I would wrap the last 20 years to, has it ever been better in the last 20 than in the last 20 years for minorities in this country? There's no way.
It's worse under Trump than it was under Obama, by far.
All right.
Unemployment for African Americans is twice as high as for white people right now.
But that wasn't different under Obama.
I think the gap was smaller under Obama. And then if we go to like Latinos, right? Latinos in America, it's much worse for them under Trump.
How so?
Because there are Latinos that are getting detained by ICE, who are legal citizens in the United States. Now they have to worry that if they don't bring their passport with them everywhere they go, they could get arrested and put in a detention center. That didn't happen under Obama.
Sure it did. What do you mean, Obama? What do you mean it didn't happen under Obama? He deported more than Trump did.
Deporting is not the same as detention in an ICE detention center. The alligator, Alcatraz, and all of that stuff that they're doing. That didn't happen under Obama.
So you're saying Obama takes a Latino man and deports him. Trump takes a Latino man and puts him into an ICE detention center. And you're like, there's such a difference. There's such
Yeah,
a
because Obama wasn't targeting Latinos. Obama was targeting people who are not citizens, undocumented immigrants.
uh,
So there would be hearings,
wait
right?
a
When you
minute.
come to
Wait
the
a minute.
United States undocumented, there's a hearing. When you come across the border, there you have to set up a date for a hearing and all of that stuff. So yeah, Obama's deporting them, but Trump is detaining them without having them go through the legal process. So Trump's not deporting them, he's detaining them, and he detains lawful US citizens. And how do they decide who's a lawful US citizen and who's not? Because you have to have probable cause. They use race to decide, oh, look, this person's Latino. He's probably an undocumented immigrant. Let's go after them.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a talking point. I don't know that there's a ton of evidence behind that. You'd have to show
You
me
haven't
the
seen,
evidence. I'll
you
believe
haven't
it.
seen,
Listen, I'm not saying I deny it. I just want to see evidence of that because that is a talking point I hear like on MSNBC. But
I I told you, I get my news from Inside Edition. And it's regular. Like
what?
Inside Edition gives me like the pop culture news because the news sometimes is too angry. Inside Edition tells me like they're like, oh look, here's Britney Spears and her DUI or whatever she's going through. They always end with some like thing from TikTok that's going viral. There's always stories about people and their pets, but at least twice a week there's a story of here's a U.S. citizen being detained and dragged out of their home and put into a detention center. So this isn't like left-wing crazy stories. These are like, I just see it on the news
Where's
that
your
Latino
Tell everyone
US
again what your news source is.
Inside Edition. And
Okay.
by the way, you should all watch it. It's so good. It's wonderful news. And
Yeah,
I also like to have something called morningsave.com. Once a week, they come on, they show you the deals that you can buy on morningsave.com. It's really happy. Just if you want to know like what is news for non-political people, Inside Edition. It just tells you what's going on in the world today. They'll lead with a big story, right? Like that's if like when the US invades Iran, then you'd hear about that. But or when they like drop bombs. Anyhow, it's
I
not
got,
crazy left-wing stuff. There are, Sean, hundreds of U.S. citizens who have been pulled out of their homes without a search warrant, without anything, and put into detention centers when
that's
they've done
wrong.
nothing wrong.
Listen,
Yeah,
you say hundreds. That's wrong.
hundreds.
There should
Yeah,
be reparations. There should be litigation. There absolutely should be. Yeah, that's wrong. Hundreds. But general, the general quality of life for minorities in America today is so much
is
better than has ever been, in my opinion.
no. It was better in Obama's
Well,
years.
I've got Obama's stats right here. They rival
Okay.
Trump's. Like we're talking
Yeah.
at one point,
Okay.
Matt,
So
3%, 83% in 2013 of anyone who crossed the border was immediately detained and deported.
okay.
And guess what
Okay.
percentage of those people were Latino?
Okay, I don't know because there's more borders than the southern border. I have no problem with deportations. That's not what I'm upset about.
Well, that
I'm
doesn't make
upset
for
about
that doesn't make for a quality of life for people who are in America very high if they're being deported.
I'm talking about people who are U.S. citizens or are here lawfully on green cards.
I am
Trump
too.
is not. I'm not talking about what's happening at the border. I'm talking about what's happening in the United States. So if I'm a Latino in the United States, I have to be more afraid that an ICE person is going to come and arrest me without a warrant and put me in a detention center.
It's not
And
very
that
different
didn't.
from under Obama.
Obama never did that.
You,
Obama never went to people's homes and took them out of their homes and put them in a detention center.
I'll look into that. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, it's true, Shawn. That's the difference.
Okay,
But yeah, this wasn't part of we didn't prepare this topic. So I'm coming at Shawn with like all of this ammo and he's like, I'm not ready for this. We're talking about different things today. So I didn't mean to make it be like that. But you just asked me a question. I was like, I'll tell you a better time.
yeah, that's good.
2019 would be
Okay,
a better time.
that's good.
Yeah. All right. All right. Let's talk about shoplifting, Shawn. We've
Okay.
talked about crime on this podcast in the past.
A lot, yeah.
Mostly it was Sam telling me how out of control things are, and Chicago's just a horrible place.
Chicago, San
stuff
Francisco, lots of places in
like
California.
New York City.
Dude,
Yeah.
in California for a while there under Obama, like I lived here, man. I lived here. It was nuts.
Do you know
Yeah.
how I know that? I would see the footage on Inside Edition. They would show me on Inside. Yeah. What I would see on Inside Edition is like there'd be like, let's say it's a jewelry store, right? There'd be like 12 cars pull up four people jump out of all of those cars. They bang down. They've got sledgehammers and all that stuff. They bang down the windows, and then they break up all the glass, and they take everything and they drive off, and they're all in
Matt,
masks. And
I
all.
can't tell you how many times I have a friend who owned this big battery store, and he said multiple times someone would walk in, they would pile up this cart just with tons and tons of stuff. They would literally walk up to the front desk and say, "I'm just taking this. You can call the cops if you want, but I'm leaving."
Wow.
Because they're like, I've got the amount of the value of what I'm taking is under the limit that would get me in more trouble, and it's just a misdemeanor. So see you later. Anyway.
I wish he would have recorded that and put it on Inside Edition, because then I would have known about it. Well, good news, Shawn. Shoplifting is down in New York City, mainly because of stronger police action and better strategies. Police are using data to find high theft areas and sending more officers there, including subway stations where thieves often escape to. They're also asking stores to report all thefts, even the small ones, which helps police make more arrests. There are new laws that allow repeat shoplifters to face more serious charges, which discourages crime. Like, so in your example, Shawn, like if he had done that at that one person's store and then he did it to another store, what they do now is they add those totals up. And so those added together would be a felony, because you could charge for this store plus this store, and then it's not a misdemeanor, it's a felony. So that's what they're trying to do in New York. So these actions are helping reduce shoplifting in the city. But here's the question I want to talk about. People often talk about crime in terms of what strategies cities should employ to discourage crime. Is this focused on the wrong thing? Rather than thinking about catching the bad guys, wouldn't it be better to focus on teaching people that stealing is wrong?
So I think I can always tell what your answer is or your opinion is on these things, but anticipating what that might be, you've preached a lot that punishment is an effective tool, or law and the punishment to breaking a law is an effective tool to try and teach people what is right and what is wrong. Have you not preached that a lot?
I say that laws teach people what is right and what is wrong. And so the fact that we have laws that say stealing is wrong is an effective tool. Right?
But wouldn't the same apply to punishments, right? Like, well, what good is a law if there is no punishment for it? Clearly the people go, oh, that's not a serious law. I can just break that law and there's no punishment. So they have to be related.
Well, I don't know. Like, think about abortion, Shawn. What's the punishment if I get an abortion against the law? They're not going to put me in jail.
No.
They're not going to give me the death penalty.
Right.
There's no real punishment for that, right?
Right.
But it still says to people, you shouldn't do this because we're going to make it hard for you to do it.
But they don't. So in other words, I don't know where you're landing on this, but my suggestion is both have to be included. You have to teach people, and you also have to have punishments enforced by law in order for society to understand what's wrong. Abortion's a good example, right? So many people don't believe it's wrong because there's no punishment involved, despite the law.
That's a good argument, Shawn. So would you say, in the case of your friend's store with batteries, if they should lower the threshold to be a felony in that case? Stealing gum is a felony. And so people wouldn't even steal gum.
I mean, what is the right...
Jean Valjean goes to jail for all that time for stealing a loaf of bread, and then he's got to carry it with him for the rest of his life. Some people would say that's too harsh of a penalty for that. But the harshness of that penalty would really tell people, don't you dare steal bread, even if you're hungry.
You brought on Les Mis. Well done, Matt. That was good.
Well,
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the threshold should be. I think the experiment for the last 10 years didn't work, or I don't know, 5 years or whatever. It didn't work. In fact, to show a liberal state like New York reversing what they tried, that experiment, where they were very lenient on punishments, and now they're reversing it because it clearly didn't work. It didn't work in Washington, didn't work in Oregon, didn't work in California. There's just more and more and more crime when you became more lenient, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm coming down on the other side of this, Shawn. I'm saying that I'm not saying we shouldn't enforce laws. I'm saying that it's impossible to create laws and enforce them in a way that will stop petty theft. You really can't. Like, in order for a democracy, a free society to thrive, you have to count on people obeying laws that are unenforceable. They call it enforcing the unenforceable. Like, The reason why, because you tell me this about what John Adams said about how important religion is in American society. The reason for that is because if you want to take your approach, at some point you might have to become like Iran or China, where you monitor everything that everybody does, because you can't punish enough to keep people in line. And to me, when I see a rise in crime, I don't think, oh, you know what? They have bad policing strategies. Oh, the city council must not care about crime. I say we are failing that generation to where they think that that's an okay thing to do. When I
Okay,
see
so then
vandalism and broken windows and all of that stuff, I say this is a community that's not teaching their people values and ethics and morals of why we don't do that in
so
our
then
community.
so then my follow-up question to you would be, whose responsibility is to teach those things?
Well, we
Say it.
have public education. We have public
You
education.
didn't. You gave the wrong answer. You went straight to government is meant to teach us right and wrong.
I think that one of the reasons we pay so many tax dollars for public education is that we need to have a system that instills morals in the next generation, because sometimes parents don't do it. Sometimes they don't. And
And
if a kid's in a bad situation, they need to have other adults that they can look to that will teach them the proper moral behavior.
Here's my issue with that. The definition of proper moral behavior is on a spectrum when you live in a secular society. And so if you leave it up to the government or a government education system to teach it, that broad spectrum is going to not necessarily teach right and wrong, Matt. They're going to teach things. What does the scripture say? They're going to call that which is good evil. And they're going to call that which is evil good. And that happens extremely often.
If we're hiring teachers that don't know the difference of right and wrong, we need to fix that system. We need to hire teachers who know what right and wrong is.
But your standard of right and wrong in a secular society, your standard of right and wrong is very different than other people's. Yes, it is.
Most religions agree on the same basic stuff of what people should and shouldn't do.
Yeah, but
we should be honest. We shouldn't steal.
But you didn't say that religion should be the source of our right and wrong. You're saying the government and the public education system should be, which is full of secularism. And so they're going to have a different standard for right and wrong.
Secularism just says there should be a separation of church and state, but that doesn't mean that you can't have religious values and principles taught in school. I can learn, a Muslim can teach my kids the same values as a Christian can teach them, and it doesn't hurt them, because then they see, oh, look, it's not just my parents telling me this, but even somebody of a totally different faith believes that I should do this.
Okay, so then would you revise the answer to when I ask you, okay, where's the source? How do we teach our society right and wrong? Would you revise it to say a religious influenced public education system?
Yeah, I'll say that.
Okay.
But religion, like not Christian, right? Religion broadly defined. Everybody gets to bring their religion with them to school and practice it and say it and be open about it however they want to be. So it's not saying the 10 Commandments, right? Because the 10 Commandments isn't necessarily enough.
So what happens? So if the platform for teaching right and wrong is the public education system, government led, and you're saying it should be religiously influenced, what happens in that scenario when you have a difference of opinion on what is right and wrong based on its religion? How do you deal with that?
That's like the foundation of society, right? You and I were talking just before the podcast about differences we have about theology. That's a healthy thing. So it's okay for people to bring their religion and say, we disagree about that. Because in the end, everybody agrees about the basic things. If you don't steal, you don't hurt people, you treat people fairly and equally. And if I have a teacher, let's say that I have a teacher who happens to be gay, right? And they start telling my kid about how gay is fine and all of that stuff. And I say, I don't want you telling my kids that gay is fine. It's okay that they do that, because they're teaching your child love and acceptance, even as them just being who they are. So it's not about the tenets of the faith. It's about people being open with who they are and their faith.
I agree with you. In fact, I'll give you the points, but you have to admit, in order to get the points, that is the opposite of what happens in the majority of public schools today. There is a backlash against religion. Okay, good. You get the points.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's what I think is the problem. I think the solution to crime is fixing public education.
By getting religion involved.
Sure. Yes, religion. But we have to allow religion, because there is like agnostic, atheist, there is secular forms of religion, right?
That's
so I got to allow all religion.
I'm fine with that, but because the opposite is happening, which is you are not allowed to talk about your religious beliefs. It is taboo. It is frowned upon. It is judged. So if you're saying, yeah, let's reverse that. Okay.
We need to
Points to
fix
Matt.
that. We
Points
need
to
to
Matt.
fix that.
That's good, Matt.
Yeah. And when somebody goes to shoplift but also, don't you think coaches in sports could do a better job of it too? Teaching good moral. Like my nephew, he played tennis back in the day, and his coach would be like, tennis is a gentleman's sport. Win or lose, you will always be a good sport. You're going to shake your opponent's hand. You're never going to say mean things to your opponent because tennis is a gentleman's game. And like this, my nephew had that instilled in his soul. And I would talk trash and he'd say, hey, Matt, tennis is a gentleman's sport. We don't do that in this.
You would talk trash?
I know, hard to imagine.
I'm shocked.
But I feel like sometimes my kids' coaches would take this other view of things, and they also would be permissive of things that, like, coaches are really important in teaching kids what's right and what's wrong. And sometimes we allow them to bring these other things in that are not good for society.
Yeah, I'd say it's 50-50 in my experience, that 50% of coaches and sports parents are teaching the wrong values and 50% are doing what your friend did, which is teach the right values. So it's not a reliable, you can't mandate it, and it's just not a reliable, as parents.
We can say we're not hiring a coach. We're not hiring a coach who acts like that.
We've done that. Like, we've absolutely done that in club ball. We've said, this dude is not teaching our kids morals. We removed him, or we walked away from that. So yeah, but notice who the responsible team was to make that decision. It's the parents. It's the parents of the kids. That is the responsible party. And I agree with you that agency allows for parents to not do a good job at that. But backed by religion is the right way to go.
Okay. Well, thanks for the points, Shawn. I'll take them.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, Charles Don Flores is a man on death row in Texas for a 1998 murder. He was convicted mainly because a witness identified him after undergoing hypnosis. Now his lawyers are asking the U.S. Supreme Court to review the case because they believe the evidence was unreliable. Not Sean Penn, but Penn from Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller. He wrote an op-ed recently where he said hypnosis can easily mislead people and create false memories. He said memory is not like a video recording in the brain. Even though police acted that way, the police used to act as if it was. So he believes the officer used suggestive questions that could change what the witness actually remembered. He says, as a magician, he knows how easy it is to make people believe things that are not true. And because of this, he thinks that the evidence from the hypnosis is not trustworthy, and that guy's conviction should be overturned. So here's the question. Should courts be able to undo the convictions of people who were convicted in the past based on evidence that past method turned out to be unreliable? Because that was 30 years ago.
I mean, if again, I'm always curious at your contrarian opinions on these things, but I think the right answer is absolutely 100%. See, I knew it. Why would you take the opposite stance? Matt, you have to consider the fact that you put too much trust in those with those in power. The scriptures, Doctrine and Covenants, warns us that it is the common experience in most people. When they receive a little bit of power, they start to exercise unrighteous dominion. The person who decided that they could put someone in a trance and get an honest piece of evidence out, that is wrong, dude. That is unrighteous dominion. And
the police did the wrong thing. I agree the police did the wrong thing.
So then it should be reversed. Then you agree with me.
That's what I don't agree with.
The police did the wrong thing. This poor guy was probably convicted wrongly. And you're like, oh, sorry, buddy.
Okay, so there's
I trust our systems too much.
There.
I trust our systems. They're going to do the right thing. Screw you. Not in your case.
There's two issues. The first is, if the police do something bad, what is the appropriate remedy for their bad behavior? And I don't think that the appropriate remedy for their bad behavior is to say, oh, that evidence can't be admitted in trial. I think I have a better way you solve that.
If
the police do something bad,
I knew. I can always tell when you have a loaded question where you just want to teach us something, which is great.
No,
I want to
because I
learn.
have a different answer to this question. But if the police do something bad and you get so this in this case, right? They so badly want to get a conviction and have this guy convicted of murder. And so we're going to hypnotize somebody and we're going to use that evidence to get him convicted of murder. If later on we decide the police shouldn't have done that, then the appropriate solution is the police get the punishment the same as the defendant. So that would really motivate police to not use stupid things to get people convicted because they know if in 30 years somebody decides I did something wrong, now I'm up for the death penalty because I used bad evidence to get. So that's what, in my opinion, that's the best solution. If a lawyer or a cop does something that violates your rights, then the penalty they get is whatever penalty that defendant got for that crime that they got convicted of. Because you can't, because what happens is if you have 12 people go into a jury room to decide, and they're deciding something really important, like, did this man kill this woman and he should get his life taken away by the government? If they know that 30 years down the road or whatever, some judge or some other person can overturn their decision, it makes them as jurors less accountable for the decisions they made. And then that less accountability makes it so they don't think as hard or as strongly about things because they just trust the system is going to take care of their problem. So you can't reverse those convictions.
Okay.
Otherwise,
Matt,
it absolves the jurors of their responsibility to do the right thing.
If you have jurors who are willing to behave in that way, you've already got a huge problem. The huge problem is relying on jurors who would not give a serious, like, heartfelt attempt to do the right thing because, well, in the future they could overturn this, so I'm going to just chill and not even pay attention here. Then your jury system is flawed in a major way. I don't think that what you're saying is true. I don't think that people would treat it that way. Maybe they would, and that makes me so sad and so scared. Matt, my biggest fear is that I would break a law someday and that I would have to submit my life and the judgment to 12 complete strangers because
I would never do that. I wouldn't trust them at all. Yeah. Because the juries are so unreliable in the decisions they make. But it's because they have this trust in the system because they're sort of like, well, if there was some legal problem or some challenge, like imagine this, Shawn, imagine the jury, because this is what I think needs to happen in death penalty cases. The jury comes in and says guilty, and then everybody walks out of the courtroom and they watch the person get hanged and they die right there. Then I know that the jury's doing their job because there's an immediate effect to their choice. And they have to watch the effect of their choice. And then they're going to think a lot more about, is that person really guilty? Because I'm going to have to watch them die here in 20 minutes if I say guilty. That's the way it ought to be.
But you think without that immediate reaction, you think people are laissez-faire about the way that they
are.
You really do? Is this based on your anecdotal, like, personal experience, or is this like a theory?
Well, in part, it's based on the time when I was in a jury. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast. I was on a jury and it was so easy to sway those people. Like I just sat in that jury room. I could have decided whatever outcome I wanted because you just like look at everybody on the jury and you're like, okay, what's their motivation? And like, how do I get it? So, okay, these three people, I got to joke with them. If I laugh with them, they're going to be on my side. These people, I've got to show my sensitive side. And so if I show my sensitive side, then oh, this person was probably raped in the past based on how she's acting. So I have to act this way with her to get her on my side. And these three people are going to convict anyways. Like a jury is so susceptible to manipulation. So part of it is that I've been on a jury and seen how easy it is.
To our audience, if anyone ever wants to just deep dive and understand what makes Matt tick, he just revealed it. That is Matt is able to look at human beings and go, how do I influence that person? And use what I know about them in order to persuade. Okay, these people do it differently. Like that is so revealing. So I can understand why you would come at a jury with such skepticism because you look yourself in the mirror and go.
But it's not just that, Shawn, because I watch a lot of court TV. So I've seen cases where they spend 6 hours presenting evidence and not 6 hours, 6 days, sometimes 12 days presenting evidence. And the jury's out there for 2 hours. And I know for a fact that they're not talking about the evidence. I know for a fact that what they do is they come in and they say, let's do straw poll right away. Let's see where people are at. And then people say where they're at. And then some people dig in their heels or don't dig in their heels. And it's just like a gut reaction. They're like, let's just figure this out as fast as we can, because they don't feel accountable for what they're doing. No matter
Okay,
how
so
much they say, oh, we're going to pay attention, they don't. So juries need to know the weight of the decisions they're making on people's lives in order to trust them with the decisions they're making. And if they say, oh,
okay,
later on it'll get overturned, then they're not going to take it seriously enough.
I hear your point. I'm not going to give you points because A, you used a question that you didn't quite answer in order for you to teach us an important opinion that you have, but you kind of strayed from the actual question and answer, because even if I agree with you about the jury thing, which I think I do, I'm very skeptical about the juries. I don't think that has anything to do with law enforcement using a wrong technique to create evidence to convict someone, that we should have the power, a judge should have the power to overturn that. I think they're completely unrelated. So
You are a product of the system, Shawn. What should have happened in this case is Charles Don Flores should have been killed in 1998, 20 minutes after the conviction. And then today, if Penn Jillette says, hey, that stuff's really bad news, he shouldn't have used hypnosis, then they should take that evidence before a judge and say, guess what? These cops used an unreliable method to get a conviction. We can interview jurors from back in the day about how much that weighed on their decision. And then if the judge is like, you're right, bad method, then you walk with the police officer and they go get hanged 20 minutes later. That's how that should work.
well, this is one of those discussions where if your wife was here, she'd be like, Matt,
She's like, shut up.
please shut up.
Okay. Shawn, I'm going to give you...
Sometimes Matt has, let's say, extreme ideas about how to adjust society and solve problems. I don't think that in a real world he would ever implement these ideas, but I like that you, in theory, are able to allow yourself to think of these and present these extreme ideas. It does trigger many of us and make us think. Listeners, don't get triggered, man. He's giving us a way to exercise our cognitive dissonant sides of our brain.
Shawn likes federalism. He likes states as laboratories of democracy. Any of you governors out there of states, let's sit down. Let's give it a try. We'll try it in your state. We'll see how it goes. And then people will get used to the idea, because they'll be like, wow, you know what they do in North Dakota?
Matt, you're such proof that political scientists make for terrible politicians. Like, you're never going to do it. I guess it's a different role.
I have a billboard. Vote Matt. Executions in 20 minutes.
Jeez.
All right. So here's the last big thought provoker. So BYU Sports have done a lot in recent years. They've become much better. Back in the day, when I was a BYU Sports fan, people would dream of national championships and drafts and all that stuff. And it never happened. BYU was always pretenders, trying to sit at the top table, but never getting there. But now BYU attracts high-level athletes. They can compete with the big programs for talent. Name, image, and likeness money helps, but there's also this environment that BYU has. Joining the Big 12 has made the program stronger and more respected. So because of these changes, BYU is becoming the kind of sports program it has always wanted to be. Here's a question, Shawn. Is this good for the church?
I'm going to have to say it is good for the church. Like, just because the church is playing the game that, the rules of society, I'll give you a good example. I don't think you would look at the church's financial situation and go, they are extremely successful and strategic and good financial investors and planners. Just because they're a church doesn't mean it's wrong for them to apply the rules of society. So I think it's probably decent for the church. I'm not the guy like Sam or you maybe, or my in-laws or my brother, who's just like, BYU is the kingdom of God on earth and whatever it takes to win, because that's my alma mater. I'm not that guy. And no, I have no problem with them failing, but I do think it's okay for them to play by the rules of society in order to give good PR to a church school. And I think that's all it is. Good PR to BYU, probably it does benefit the church. It exposes lots of people to the gospel when people can look at BYU in a good light. Like, for example, this past year, there were so many incidences when we were when BYU was playing and the crowd started chanting "F the Mormons, F the Mormons, F the Mormons." I think that overwhelming reply has a good effect because people look at that and go, "Oh, how awful is that? Who are the Mormons and why would they get this kind of treatment?" So my answer is yes, it's good for the church, I think.
I think that you're right that, for example, AJ DeBonsa, because he's going to be the number one pick and he was up for Player of the Year. Every time they mention his name, almost they mention BYU, and then that sometimes it leads to discussions about the church. So I understand from the marketing perspective, like why it's good for the church for their name to be out there and good for them to be on ESPN, good for them to be talked about in sports place. I get that argument. But here's the question I wonder about. Now, I know that the money for all of this stuff is not coming from tithing dollars, but some of it is. Not all of the coaches' salaries is coming from boosters. Some of that is coming from tithing dollars. And if I just join the church in, I don't know, some poor third world country, and we're meeting for church in like a building with a dirt floor or whatever, and I'm giving a lot of my time in service to the church, there has to be a part of me that looks at the church in Utah and says, whoa, what is happening there? And the BYU players are not always good examples. Like, I agree that there can be some good, but there's also some really bad that can come when it feels like there's inequality in the church and that BYU sports players get treated so good compared to other people who don't get all of the same benefit that they get.
Yeah, that is a great point. But is it ever going to be fair? Is mortality ever going to be fair to
No,
everyone?
but but like okay, so as it is in the United States, if you play sports and you're good, it's not even just the US, right? If you're good at sports, society treats you better, right? You get to have better, you get free equipment, you get all kinds of other things. And I could understand why people would say, "But you're not a better person than I am." And I could understand why that would cause like some resentment and to say, like it's church tithing like okay, so for example, I saw a photo within the last month of I don't know if it was AJ DeBonsa or Robert Wright or one of these some BYU basketball player who is I don't think he's a member of our church, but he's doing photo shots with members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. I could understand why people would be like, why is it like, oh, the apostles really want to take a photo with this basketball player or whatever, and they just don't even care about me, or they haven't come to my country or my city or whatever to ever visit us, but they go be like fan out about BYU sports.
Okay, so are you saying? I mean, obviously, there's this balance, right? Do the goods outweigh the negative effects? Are you saying it crosses the line?
I don't know the answer. I don't. I
That's
guess
not
I
what
can
we
see
do on the
both
Latter Day
sides.
Lens. We don't come in and
Yeah.
ask a question and go, "I don't know."
I have to be I want to be careful because I believe that these kinds of decisions are inspired because the board of trustees of BYU is the first presidency. So I don't want to be too critical and be like the first presidency's never thought about what I'm saying. So I don't want to like go too strong and say that it's bad for the church because I imagine they think about that. But I will say I'm sympathetic to the argument that says maybe this isn't the best thing for the church.
Yeah, I think the real question is, does the good outweigh the bad that it does? Because there's no way
Yeah.
of avoiding the bad that it does. Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
your examples are spot on. And
I'll
like
give you
the
the
one,
point, Shawn.
and like a couple of months ago, a good friend of ours who has this incredible podcast series, um, Leading Saints. Shout out to Leading Saints. He got up on this really passionate post and was like, "Listen, I'm not dogging anything, but just to see the amount of money that these coaches are getting for these sports, for basket, like putting a ball through a hoop." And then he's like, "I'm not complaining, but to get on and to say, look, I'm doing this great," and he's doing great work to help Latter-day Saints know how to do better in their callings and it's a nonprofit. So, he has to go out and try and earn money to continue to do the good that he's doing. And then he sees the millions and millions of dollars that goes towards a kid throwing a ball through a hoop. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's probably, there's negatives, man. There are, but do they outweigh? Yeah.
Right. It's hard to say. Well, and that's why in the end I'll say I'll trust the board of trustees, but I'm sympathetic to the idea that maybe it's not worth it. Maybe. I do know that these sorts of discussions happen all the time, right? Where there's people in the 12th that are like, "Really?" And there are others that are like, "Of course." So, I don't know.
Matt can see both sides of something and takes a rare stance of, oh, as opposed to, I see both sides. I'm going to take the scariest side and like preach it, like putting a billboard up that says you should execute people 20 minutes after. Okay. All right. Okay.
I mean, to me, okay.
I
We're
love
gonna
you,
move
Matt.
to
I love you so much.
we're gonna move to such a bizarre big question, but I really need
I
to know
love
what
this
Shawn
question.
thinks about this. Okay. So, for my daughter's reception, she decided that she wanted to have a bunch of fish so we put these centerpieces, and there's like a flower in there and then sand, and then we put water in there, and then we put goldfish in there. So we had to buy like 15 goldfish. And so then there was this big debate about like, should we kill the goldfish? And just like 30 minutes, like an hour ago, we got back. I saved all the goldfish. I have a pond in my front yard, and I saved all the goldfish and I put them in my pond because we didn't want to hurt the goldfish because like the Bible says thou shalt not kill and stuff like that. And so there was these questions about, even at the pet store, they didn't want to sell me the goldfish if they thought I was going to use them for a bad purpose. So I had to let her know I have a pond. They're going to go in my pond. Anyhow, so this is a question scientists have actually thought about. Can fish feel pain and have conscious experiences? Many scientists now believe fish do feel pain based on studies of their behavior and brains. However, it is hard to prove because pain is a personal experience that science cannot directly measure. Some researchers still question the evidence or say it is not strong enough. Because of this uncertainty, experts suggest we should treat fish as if they can feel pain and think more carefully about how humans use them. Meanwhile, the FDA has approved lab-grown salmon in the United States. There's a company in San Francisco. They got some stem cells from a fish, and they use that same fish's stem cells to make fish meat without actually creating the fish. So the salmon is made from fish cells grown in a lab. So there's no fish that's being killed, but the salmon tastes just like salmon from a real live fish. So my question is, of these two options, having fish raised and then killing them to eat them, or taking some stem cells and growing them in a lab, which is less moral? Is it worse to kill fish for food or to eat fish grown from a lab based on stem cells? By the way, no other podcast is talking about this week. You're welcome, listeners.
Okay, well, first we have to go to the Latter-day lens, right? We have to look and see what Scripture says about animals. And I think there's 3 good guiding scriptures. And I love when Scripture gives us real good clarity. The first one is in D&C 89. Yea, flesh also of the beast and of the fowls of the air are ordained for the use of man, number 1. Number 2, Proverbs 12:10. A righteous man regardeth the life of his beast. A righteous man regardeth the life of his beast. Luke 12. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 farthings, and not one of them is forgotten before God? So I think what this teaches us is God clearly commands us to respect, love, and be good stewards over the animals, the beasts that have been created. We are stewards over them. Adam and Eve were given stewardship over the animals. And then God teaches them to love and be kind and to be Christ-like. So I think that's clear principle number 1. And then you got the doctrine of Covenants 89, clear principle number 2. Flesh, also of the beast and the fowls of the air, is ordained for the use of man with some guidance and regulations. But I think in treating, like often when I see the representation of how Native Americans or hunters today will hunt beasts and the respect that they show and the goodness and the kindness, right? They kill a deer, some venison, and then they stopped and give it respect and they give thanks and they say a prayer about how grateful they are for this sacrifice. That seems to be the right approach. So, Matt, I don't know the morality of going into a lab and taking stem cells and making things out of them. I don't know yet, man. I'm agnostic on that. So I can only answer that it is okay for us to, if we treat beasts and if we treat them with love, respect, and kindness, and understand that because they were ordained by God for our use in that sense, with some many restrictions, yeah, there's a right. You can do it in the wrong way. You can kill animals and eat animals in the wrong way, and I think it would be egregious to God.
So in a 1978 address, President Spencer W. Kimball reiterated the phrase, "Don't kill the little birds."
I'm only willing to let you read that if you read it in his voice. Do it. Do it again.
Well, it would be like sacrilegious, right? Because he had like
Why?
throat cancer, and I would be like, oh, girl. Like
Yeah,
he,
I just you've
it
triggered
sounds.
enough people. Yeah, you've done sketchy stuff enough on this episode. I want to do more.
So President Kimball frequently quoted this refrain to encourage kindness toward animals and discourage unnecessary killing, sometimes expanding it to include other creatures. He directly challenged the practice of hunting for sport or leisure rather than necessity. And he described the killing of animals for sport as grievous sin and argued against the wanton destruction of life. So,
I'm good with that. I'm good with
so
that.
he would say you only kill them if
I
it's
agree.
necessary. But in the United States, we don't need to kill animals for meat, especially if I can grow them as stem cells. I don't need to kill anything. So if we only kill them because we need to, then this new technology means I never need to kill a salmon ever again. I can just buy it from this lab that grew it all by itself.
Again, I'm agnostic, Matt, on the morality of taking stem cells and creating living things, or at least the byproduct of living things. We
So
don't
then
know
we
if that's moral or not. I don't find script. Is there a Latter-day lens on that? You tell me, is there a Latter-day lens on that?
No, this is why it fascinates me. Because if I were to say if I were to say, Shawn, we're gonna take the stem cells from a human
I
and
make a
then we're gonna
human.
just grow a heart for somebody, we would
That's
say,
right.
whoa, 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 that's wrong, right? For humans, we know that there's this Latter-day lens that says, don't take stem cells and grow human body parts
Where's
for
that? What's that Latter-day lens?
wait, you think that that could be okay?
I didn't say that. I'm asking
Oh,
you,
okay.
where's the Latter-day lens?
Well, like
Where's the
it's
scripture? Where's the guidance?
okay, so this is where that would come from. Is President Russell M. Nelson said that in the Doctrine and Covenants says, "Thou shalt not kill, nor do anything like unto it." And he says from that scripture, that's where it tells us that abortion is wrong because abortion is like unto murder. And so, by extension, you could say like unto it would be, or take stem cells and grow a almost human, but not quite, that we're just going to use to like harvest organs or something like that, right? That would be almost like killing.
Okay, but you could also argue on the other side, now to play the Matt's devil's advocate side, you could also argue that we are learning to be like there's those who act and those that act upon, and you look at the way that Joseph Smith taught that the creation of the world happened was it wasn't ex nihilo, right? It wasn't nothing existed and then God said poof, it exists. He took existing matter and materials and he organized them and reorganized them into something. Why is that not creation? Why is a
I
stem
love
cell in a heart,
it.
why is that not just creation?
I love the idea that our Earth was like, there's this embryonic planet stuff out there in the universe. And God was like, hey, here's some planet stem cells. Let's take these planets that would grow into whatever and let's create an Earth over here with those planets embryo stem
Well,
cells.
you've inserted a lot into that. It doesn't say that. What it says is that there are two types of materials that exist. There's chaotic materials and there's ordered materials. He's simply saying that yes, there are eternal elements that exist that are in chaos. And the godlike attribute is to be able to learn how to take those chaotic elements and organize them. So
Wow.
you read into that a lot,
Wow,
man.
Shawn. Shawn, I did not think this would be your position on this, that both are okay. It's okay to kill animals if you want for food, and it's okay to grow them from stem cells if you want
I
for
didn't
food.
say that. I said
It could be
there's a
okay.
right way. There's a right way, yeah, to treat animals and use them for food, and there's a wrong way. God gave us that Latter-day lens. I am agnostic about the whole. I'm just asking questions, Matt. Don't you think that it's part of the creation process? I don't know. I'm agnostic about the whole lab thing.
We don't know yet.
It's.
You're saying we don't know enough to know. There's nothing been revealed on it yet.
I mean, it sounds like a gun to your head right now. If you had to make the decision, you would say, "Yeah, it's probably better. Let's do it." That sounds like what you would say.
No, I don't. I don't. I don't know is the answer. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
It,
we're
it
both.
feels like it feels like if I'm taking materials that were intended to grow into a human, and I'm saying let's change that growth process, and you're not going to become a human. I just need you to become an elbow. Right? That would be the argument of why we shouldn't abort fetuses. A fetus isn't a human, right? But we say, well, we don't abort a fetus because it has the potential to become human. And if I say, well, it also has the potential to become an elbow, and I want it to be an elbow right now. Like there's something about that that feels like maybe not the right thing to do. And so if it would be wrong to do that with a human, maybe it's the wrong thing to do with fish. At the same time, I see your argument of if God reveals information or we develop this understanding of materials and we can use them for the use and benefit of not just mankind, but for the world, then we should use everything available to us that hasn't been strictly prohibited for the benefit of the world.
I see it both ways. And I think motive matters. Like what would be the motive of a pharmaceutical company or someone creating stem cell fish for food? What is the motive? You tell me, what's the motive?
So because there's overfishing and it hurts populations, right?
Wrong. Money.
Oh, oh, that's right. Well, probably money too. But I would imagine, right? Is it like you've had I don't know if you eat shrimp. Do you eat shrimp?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so farm-raised shrimp are way cheaper than shrimp caught in the wild, right? And so this idea that we're going to take this pond and we're going to put a bunch of shrimp out there that all they're going to do is grow up and be food someday, or we're going to put salmon in a farm and they're just going to be food someday. Maybe that's also an unethical practice to say we're creating life just to eat it.
Or like this amazing, this idea that when you eat eggs, if you buy eggs that are $5 more expensive because we put a note on them that says that they are free-range chickens, meaning these guys aren't in a cage, right? Is there a difference? Is there a right way and a wrong way to do it?
Yeah. Okay. So maybe I would agree with you. I can't find any revealed information on these to tell me about stem cells or the proper use. And we do eat eggs, and eggs have the potential to become chickens someday. So maybe it's like, I don't know. Caviar is super delicious and expensive, and that's just eggs to fish. So,
I don't know, but hang on, but eggs are different, right? Because you take an egg that is fertilized with the intent of becoming a chicken, and we don't eat those. We do not eat those.
We not on purpose, but sometimes we do.
Oh,
sure. Sometimes.
Well, that's what I mean, but it's not on purpose, right?
We don't say it's morally wrong. We don't say like, "How dare you? You ate that fertilized chicken."
But hang on. But how fascinating is it though that the egg from a chicken, the ones that we mostly eat or intending to eat, are those that we know are intentionally created just probably for food because they are not fertilized. They don't turn into a chicken.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's a tough one.
Well, listeners would love to hear your feedback on that. I promise you, nobody else is talking about that this week. And I learned a lot from Shawn. I didn't know where he would come down on that. And I still have no idea where we've come down on that. But it was good to talk about. And I think this week was a little like less angry, less contentious. I mean, last week was fine too. I'm not upset about last week, but
it was fine.
Good.
No, you guys had strong opinions, and I don't think you got mad at each other. I think it's good to hear strong opinions. I don't think there was any anger in there.
There's less anger about should we eat fish or grow fish. But if I were to tell you my feelings about killing animals, then I don't know. I would probably like make a lot of people upset. So I'm not going to say my opinion about killing animals.
I'll just tell them what Matt's opinion is. It's okay as long as it happens 20 minutes after you decide that you're going to
make it quick,
kill that animal.
And then it's fine. That's beautiful. Thanks, Shawn. Hey, listeners, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week. It's always sad to say goodbye, but we hope you'll join us again next week. New episodes drop each Wednesday. In the meantime, subscribe to the podcast, give us a like, and visit our website for past episodes. You can comment on the show at realmormonism@gmail.com. Thank you for making us one of the most listened to podcasts. We love our listeners.